Welcome back. Market news now. In Hong Kong led a rally in most Asian markets on Thursday after the US reached out to China in what was a fresh bid to avert a trade war. This provided some much-needed respite to weary investors. News that Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin had invited top Chinese officials for talks comes just under a week after Donald Trump threatened to impose further tariffs on all $500 billion worth of imports from China. The president's top economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, also called the move a positive thing and added that you could say that the communication has picked up a notch. China's Commerce Ministry on Thursday also welcomed the offer and said the two sides were discussing details. So a good day across the board. Tokyo's Nikkei gaining 1% to close at 22,821. Hong Kong's Hang Seng grew 2.5% to 27,014, while the Shanghai Composite 1.2% to the good, closing out at 2,686. Well, if you take a look at the United States, the Dow and S&P 500 ended slightly higher on Wednesday after news of a fresh round of US-China trade talks, while the Nasdaq did, however, fall following a decline in Apple shares as the company unveiled larger iPhones but made just minor changes to its offerings. The industrial picked up 0.1% to 25,998. The S&P 500 was marginally higher at 2,888, with the Nasdaq Composite losing 0.25%, 7,954. It's a red day across the market today, down 0.33%, but a better market picture for the Rand, which is at around 14 Rand 85 or so. Perhaps it can continue to strengthen as we get news of that trade war, perhaps de-escalating somewhat. Let's take a look now at how the remainder of the European and local markets are faring. Well, Chantal Marks from F&B Wealth and Investment joins me now as we unpack the market picture. A lot of negativity today, Chantal, 0.33% down as well. We're down again for the year on the JSE All Share. It just seems to get from bad to worse, and clearly we can't make it up for the remainder of the year, some would say. Do you think the sentiment is right?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to say what's going to happen over the next 4 or so months because there's still a lot that needs to happen, and we don't know what the direction of the Rand is going to be and how this trade war scenario is going to play out. But today was quite an interesting one because it was green across global markets, and the Rand has actually strengthened quite a bit, but still the local market deep in negative territory, just kind of showing investors that the issues that's facing South Africa are also South Africa specific and not just based on emerging markets and overall sentiment.
But surely then the trade situation out with China and the United States, then perhaps coming to some sort of meeting and discussion, that may have played a part in emerging markets joy, perhaps, if you want to call it that?
Yeah, so I think that the improvement in emerging market currencies are kind of twofold. Firstly, they were a little bit on the oversold side, and then secondly, the fact that the Chinese and US officials are sitting around a table again discussing the trade war, also having a positive impact there.
Yeah, continuing to take a look at that Rand now at around 14 Rand 74, if you take a look right behind you, so that's immediate data there. How much better can it get? Surely it's meant to even be below 14 Rand, one would have hoped.
Yeah, I mean, so if you look at it from a fundamental perspective, the Rand still looks very much oversold, and directionally it does seem to be moving in the right direction, or in a direction of strengthening further. Over the longer term, though, the Rand will probably continue to weaken relative to developed market currencies, and that's just due to inflation and interest rate differentials. But certainly on a short-term basis, the Rand still has legs to the downside.
Yeah.
Well, the strengthening side.
Quickly take a look at some mining news now. Firstly, Impala Platinum coming out with a set of earnings. A big struggle has been in the gold mining sector. Has the platinum sector suffered the same?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the cost structures are a little bit different, and it all depends on which platinum mine you are looking at specifically. Some of the older shafts are really struggling in a similar way that the gold sector is struggling. Very deep, very old mines that need to be mined. It's very high cost. But then some of these companies actually have some new generation shafts and even open cast operations or open pit operations, like for example Anglo American Platinum, where the guys are actually doing very, very well from a cost perspective and therefore from a profitability perspective. Impala's result was actually quite mixed because the cost performance was better than expected. Revenue was more or less in line with expectations, but the operation overall on a reported basis is still loss-making because of a big restructuring charge coming through and some impairments of its Impala Rustenburg assets.
Yeah, so quite an interesting company on that front. That brings in the mining data to have come out of Stats SA today as well then. It was the darling, perhaps if you want to call it that, of the second quarter GDP numbers, but now dropping down around 5.2% year on year in July. That mining data is supposed to go the other way around.
Yeah, and I mean, if you consider that the August number last year was up 8.9%, you've got a very demanding base for next month. So the probability of mining production actually contributing positively to third quarter GDP has all but diminished. And if you look at it even deeper and you consider that only 4 of the 12 commodities actually measured, or I think it's around 12, it might be a little bit more measured, was showing positive output. We had very deep contractions in platinum, in gold, in iron ore, just to name a few.
Yeah. Chantel Marks, appreciate your time there from FNB Wealth and Investment, unpacking the markets for us, which currently sit in the red, but the rand, as you can see, rallying ever so slightly to around 14 rand and 74 cents. Well, we can continue to unpack just a few things as well. Of course, we do have Nompumelelo Sizinga, Siziba right out in Sandton, taking a look at Moody's, who continue to unpack the situation as Moody's continue to have their discussion around South Africa. What exactly is said to happen? Just wanted to take a very quick look as well at how things have been since 1994. As you can take a look there, with things starting off in 1994, we got our first currency update there. As you can see, the foreign currency debt in 1994 sat at BAA3, and that then was a stable mark right through up until 2001, with a BA1 rating right through for the local currency debt right up until 2001 as well. From then on, we continue to see improvements in South Africa's credit rating, stabilization, of course, in South Africa's debt levels, and a surplus both on the current account and, of course, on the trade account as well. But as it hit 2009 and that financial crisis hit, we tried to stabilize for some time, but South Africa's debt matrices have certainly been weakening, and as you can see, we continue to fall as the years go by. It was the worst stage around 2015 as well, where we saw Nenegate happen, and so we saw a large fall there when Moody's got to our rating. So as you can see, this bottom half of the graph does put us in junk status. We are just edging just above that mark. What we don't want is for Moody's to dip any lower than that. So we currently do sit at a credit rating of BAA3. We are on a stable watch from Moody's, so we'll see exactly what they do from here on in. Nzinga.